Anthony, thanks. Back to tonight's top story. I'll tell you what, no matter what way you cut it, it's a hard story to tell, and there are a lot of people hurting tonight. How do you reconcile this? How do you move forward? There is school tomorrow at Midland Christian. The message to parents tonight is coming from the school board president. In addition to cooperating with police, Jason Stockstill says that in part, the physical, spiritual, and emotional safety of our students is the most important responsibility that they bear. As educators, they say they appreciate the support and the prayers. So what happened? Court documents state a freshman baseball player was sexually assaulted with a baseball bat by a sophomore teammate last month. Key coaches and administrators knew about it and did not report it as required by state law. We'll walk you through all of that in a moment. But first, here's a look at who's involved. We've got Superintendent Jared Lee, Athletic Director Greg McClendon, Assistant Principal and Coach Matt Counts, Head Baseball Coach Barry Russell, and High School Principal Dana Ellis. Each have been charged with failure to report neglect or abuse. Tonight, jail records indicate that all of those faculty members have left the Midland County Jail on a personal recognizance bond. What is that? Well, it means all they had to do was give their word that they will show up for a future court date. These are usually granted to people with clean records and longtime community residents. Now let's take you through the timeline of events. There's a lot of information to this story. It all starts on the week of January 17th through the 21st. That is when the alleged assault happened in the locker room at Christensen Stadium. That's where the baseball team plays and practices. On January 20th, secondary school principal Dana Ellis is notified of the assault. The next day, Ellis notifies Superintendent Jared Lee, who then directs Athletic Director Greg McClendon and Coach Matt Counts to conduct an internal investigation. Police then get word of the assault on January 28th. An investigator makes contact with Superintendent Lee, who acknowledged school administrators were looking into the matter. That brings us to the end of last week, February 11th. A detective goes to Midland Christian. They learn that Ellis is aware of the assault and that Lee has documentation that she does not have access to. That's according to the court documents. This Monday is when everything comes to light. Lee tells law enforcement that he will not provide any documentation without a search warrant. So police show up to the school later that day to execute a search warrant. Now, the search finds that Lee, Ellis, Counts, McClendon, and Russell knew of the assault since January 21st. Lee hands over those documents described as notes gathered from student interviews. None of those were conducted by authorities, by the way. Detectives also obtained emails that make clear something happened in the baseball locker room and that the school had a duty to report it. Court documents state several of the administrators refused to report that incident. Now, that brings us all to today, when all 5 of the faculty members were arrested for failure to report. This was around 11 o'clock today. A lot to go through. Now, these events also raise a big question about the future of the baseball team. Corey Mose is here to talk about their next steps. Corey, what do we know so far? You know, their season's about to begin.
Yeah, Tim, the season is right around the corner. They've actually been playing a bunch of preseason tournament games. And the thing is now, with the coaches in custody, what's next for the baseball team? And it seems like a lifetime ago, the Mustangs were parading the streets after winning a state title. Now, not even a year later, the team's in the dark about their future. After talking to multiple coaches from the school, they've canceled practice today and also backed out of an upcoming tournament. The school was supposed to have a meeting tonight about the program's future. That future was going to include new head coach Barry Russell, but now that's up in the air. The legendary coach won a state title back in 2001 and retired in 2018 after 34 years in the dugout. Until the job opening at Midland Christian became available, that was enough to get Coach Russell back to the diamond. But now we don't know if he's going to be back at the school. Once we find out that answer and more, we'll be sure to update you. Tatum.
Thanks, Corey. There's still so much to go through on this. Now, the charges against the school administrators and coaches are serious. They could have been charged with a misdemeanor, but instead they were charged with a felony. Now, if you work at a school, no matter what your job title is, you are required by Texas law to report any suspected abuse immediately. Now, to sum it all up, any school employee is required to report any suspected abuse or neglect immediately, but also no later than 48 hours after they suspect the abuse. School employees, they don't have to report to a supervisor or a coworker first. They can go directly to police. Also under the law, they cannot delegate or rely on someone else to report it either. Now, what makes this case even more serious is the accusation that the school officials tried to cover it up. Now, under normal circumstances, not reporting the suspected abuse under state law is considered a Class A misdemeanor. In this case, under state law, which you see here, if you intended to conceal it, that would then make it a state jail felony. While that is the lowest level of felonies in the state, it still means jail time if convicted.